Welcome to Backboard Banter on the board with your hosts Matt Middleton and Kevin Rayner, where the banter's as ferocious as Serbia versus Greece and FIBA yesterday, my friend. You see those two NBA legends putting on a show.
The MVPs of recent Legend of the League going at it. Giannis doing everything he can, but just not able to pull through in the end.
Dude, he dropped a FIBA record of 40 points. Like he was putting in the work, man. The fact that Serbia beat them in overtime, I mean, I guess, but hey, Giannis, man, he's carrying that Greece team just for your boy.
He does what he can, tries to keep Matt's happiness alive, but when you're going up against the Serbian monster, the back-to-back MVP, it's hard to get that W's. Plus, I don't really know these teams extremely well, but I mean, Jokic against Giannis. Let's talk about the rest of the rosters. There's probably a reason why Giannis didn't pull it through in the end.
Hey, man, he is the number one unquestioned player in the league for a reason. He should have pulled it out. Just my opinion.
It is what it is, but at the end of the day, what can you do, right? You can't win them all, especially it's just one man in a 15-guy sport. But let's talk about another one man. Let's talk about a guy who has kept the entire NBA world waiting. And the situation is over, it's done with, and nothing came out of it. Kevin Durant is still in Brooklyn. The saga is over. The ridiculousness is done. I'm glad we don't have to talk about it anymore, in all honesty.
Man, I love the memes that are coming out of it. Kevin Durant, Nets, trade me. Nets, no. Okay, fire the coach and the GM. Nets, no.
No.
I'm gonna retire. No, you're not. Okay, I'll play. That's about right.
The conversation is that it's kind of embarrassing. It doesn't look good. Either way, man, Brooklyn Nets have to figure it out. They've got a lot to think about. Kevin Durant has a lot to think about, and it's a different story now because the team on paper is good. And, I mean, their odds are back to being like a top 4 seed in the East all of a sudden that he's going to play. It's ridiculous.
Well, dude, their roster is pretty good when you think about the fact that they have Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Ben Simmons as, their 3 superstars. That's a great 3-headed monster. Yeah. And then you have Joe Harris and Seth Curry as your major shooters. And then you've got the guy who was just absolutely a flamethrower in the bubble in TJ Warren coming off the bench. Like, if he can capture any of that and bring it into this NBA season, like, that's pretty deep. Like, that's a 6-man deep lineup. And then not to mention like the other pieces that they have. Who knows, man? Like, the Nets could make some noise, and if they win the NBA championship this year against everybody saying like 0 chance, ha ha ha, like this is so funny, I think it would just be kind of fitting for Kevin Durant. It might enhance his legacy even more that he was able to do it through all this turmoil, man.
It would be really good for him, but I more enjoy the GM side of things. The fact that, Joe and crew, they stood their ground. They said, no, we are not doing this. We're not just throwing you away for nothing. And I mean, I still joke that Rudy Gobert is the reason why Kevin Durant didn't get traded, but at the end of the day, when you're trading such a superstar asset for so much contract length still, it's impossible. You're never going to find the right thing because you need to trade half your team. And if anyone has learned anything from the Carmelo Anthony situation to the New York Knicks, like, you just do not gut your team for one player, because when it does work out, it's great. But when it doesn't, which is most of the time, you end up looking like fools and are, messed up for the next few years.
Absolutely, man. Like, we didn't even gut our team to get Kawhi Leonard, and it still kind of set us back a little bit after he left, right? So could you imagine if we had to give up, Kyle, Fred, Siakam? Like, our team would have just been so bad. We wouldn't have won a championship. We would never, be able to say that, the Raptors have won, that we are still a good team today. So, yeah, man, I agree. Like, no team wanted to dance with that. So they're all going to focus on the last big name on the market, which is Donovan Mitchell, man. I mean, Utah fleeced Minnesota, who's, they're in a desperate situation to show that they're relevant. They're trying to capitalize on Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards. So it might pan out. It probably won't. But now, Utah's going after more picks and more assets with Donovan. Like, let's see what they can do, man.
The phone has been picked up once again. Knicks and Jazz, they are talking. They're trying to figure out what team wants which. I guess it's right. Will Donovan Mitchell move now? He's the last big piece on the market, right? We'll talk about the Pat Bev trade in a bit because it is relevant to this because, his comments saying how, KD has made it hard for guys to get paid for their jobs because nobody wants to make a trade. Nobody wants to make a move because there could have been a chance at Kevin Durant, and now it's like less or so with Donovan Mitchell. But I just don't know where he's going to go. Right, the Jazz want to get younger. They're looking to get assets. They've still got a decent amount of older pieces on this roster from Conley, Clarkson, Rudy Gay. They've got Boyan still. Like they can get younger and find more assets, and whether it be the Knicks and this Donovan Mitchell trade or other things, I'd be surprised if the Jazz were done making moves.
Well, I think the Knicks are like their best target. Speaking about Minnesota being a desperate franchise who's trying to capitalize, maybe the Knicks kind of feel that way. They haven't been relevant in what 40 years. So like they've got Julius Randle, they've got RJ Barrett, they've got Jalen Brunson, they add Donovan Mitchell. Now what's that going to cost them? Apparently they want to, especially Thibodeau wants to keep Quentin Grimes over RJ Barrett, would rather include him, which might save you some assets. Obi Toppin and like a bunch of firsts, like what are they going to be able to really give up for Utah to feel that enticed with the player package to not ask for like 8 picks? Because at the end of the day, I think Utah is going for that rebuild, for that tank, and they want the picks. And if New York's willing to give them up, especially like some unprotected, New York's gonna screw it up and be involved in the lottery and give those picks over to Utah. You just know, man.
Exactly, and I mean everyone's trying to go, the model tank rebuild route, right? They're trying to go OKC style, and unfortunately, even that might not work out because OKC over here has to, think about what they're gonna do now. It's the no W's for Wembanyama season because Chet Holmgren out for the season. He's got a Liz Frank injury in his right foot. He finally defends LeBron in one possession in the crossover or whatever, and he's too fragile, got a foot injury. Like, it sucks. It really sucks. But now they've got to figure it out.
Man, I think that is such a bad omen for his career. To be drafted second overall, to have all of the concerns about you be about your size and your durability, and then in a pro-am game, guarding, yeah, arguably one of the bigger players in the NBA and one of the bigger forces in the NBA. But there are tons of guys who can, bring force like LeBron,
Yeah.
and just like a big body crashing into you. And the fact that he got hurt so quickly and so easily, like, makes me really sad. They say it's going to be the full season, so OKC doesn't even get to see what they have in him. I think that should affect Wembanyama's status, man, because Wembanyama is like a taller, thinner Chet Holmgren. What are we gonna like? Are we not gonna just watch this and be like, oh, we should avoid Wembanyama because he's probably gonna be frail. He's probably gonna be like a bull who can never stay healthy enough to get into lineups because he's so tall and thin and so frail. Like, it's just, man, it's sad and scary. And if I'm a team drafting at the top of next year's draft, I don't know if it's Wembanyama anymore, personally.
It's hard, right? 7-footers and foot injuries. Name a more likely combination that's going to derail your career. Or like, it's sad. Like, OKC was really looking like this could be the real turning point when their rebuild really started to, boil together and become something. And now it's just another year of nothing. I mean, I hear rumors that, they don't want Shea to play in any, Team Canada games. They don't want to lose any of their assets at this point in time. But OKC, man, you're on the tank side of things. You're going to have young kids where you don't know whether they're going to become something, whether they're going to bust, whether they're going to boom, whether they're going to have injuries or not. And that's why you can't just rely on tanking, right? Like, the Jazz have to figure out, are they going to be middling or are they not? But with Chet and OKC, I just feel bad. I want these rookies to have the opportunity to play. We enjoyed watching Scottie be who we wanted to be, and Chet was that type of Rookie of the Year player. Wembanyama is that type of, almost guaranteed Rookie of the Year player if he's healthy and can play, right? But you've got it on the money. You have to think about injuries. You have to think about longevity because the best availability is being available. Simple as that.
Yeah, the best ability is availability. So, like, the fact that he could come back, this could be the 1 year of his career that he gets an injury and then he's injury free or pretty durable, plays like 70 plus games for the rest of his career. Joel Embiid is a recent memory of a guy who's been able to overcome the early career injuries to be a superstar, right? And we're hoping Zion is also that type of player. The thing about both of those guys is that they're much thicker guys than Chet and Wembanyama. So the NBA is a very physical league, man. It's filled with a bunch of physical freaks who can crash and who can, jump out of the gym, who are strong. Like you need, I think, a thicker frame to really be a superstar in this league. And I feel so bad for Chet, for OKC fans, and I feel bad for Wembanyama, man, because this could cost him a lot of money.
Yeah, it could. And your comment of needing to be thicker and stronger, I think especially when you refer to, the bigger wings, the centers especially, like when you have that size and you're expected to play against those players, because your other option is, well, you're lanky, you got to do Kevin Durant style, or you have to play on the perimeter with these super fast guards that you probably can't keep up with. Like, we've seen the league in the past 30, 40 years be a guard-driven league, and part of the reason why is there's been a history of large players coming into the NBA and either not being able to have the careers they could or having those careers cut short because of injuries. It's just a fact at this point.
Greg Oden and Yao Ming, man, it just is the way it is, unfortunately, man. But let's move on to some brighter news. There was a trade in the NBA. It's brighter. It's in California. It's sunny.
I'll give you that.
I'm not a huge Pat Bev fan, but Pat Bev is loved around the league. Players love him. Not what Russell Westbrook, but hey, man, he gets traded to the LA Lakers, and LA's got now a defensive guard presence, which is nice. Cover up for Westbrook if they have to keep him.
Honestly, I think it's a great trade. I think getting Pat Bev on this team is good. The Lakers, when they won a championship in the bubble, they were a defensive team. They were strong on the defensive end. Have you looked at their defensive statistics in the last few years? It's towards the bottom of the league in their rating. So Pat Bev will definitely help on that matter. The Pat Bev and Westbrook situation aside, I don't even want to get into it because, Westbrook might not even be on this team, but they don't like each other. There's been some serious beef. So whether this is the Lakers being like, hey, Westbrook, we definitely don't want you. Here's another reason why you shouldn't be around. I don't know, but it's kind of hilarious.
It's hilarious is what it is. And I mean, I think it's smart team building at this point, right? Pat Bev is an older player, which LeBron likes. He's a defensive-minded player, so it gives them, a defensive anchor with AD and LeBron, because, when LeBron turns it on, he's still one of the best defenders in the NBA. So now it gives them that opportunity to have that kind of a roster. But yeah, I think they've got to trade Westbrook. I mean, everyone's talking about it. Kyrie seems to be off the table, but maybe they go to Indiana, man, and they get Miles Turner and Buddy Hield, and they just trade a bunch of first round picks and Westbrook and go for it this year.
I mean, if they do actually end up trading Westbrook for Buddy Hield, everyone's going to be pulling that trade conversation from years ago when they should have just gotten Buddy Hield in the first place. But that kind of looks like where things are going, right? I've heard the rumors of Buddy and Miles Turner getting traded for Westbrook and 2 first-round picks. Then the Pacers get to buy out Westbrook, have all this cap space, have Lakers picks, which, they still could be something, especially if they're a ton of years from now. So it will be an interesting situation if the Lakers can figure it out. But in terms of Pat Bev, he did say that the next few years were going to be his when the Clippers got Kawhi and Paul George. Now he's on the other side of the story. That could work out for him.
Dude, he's been traded 5 different times since that statement. Like, I feel kind of bad for him, but, like, that's why you don't talk smack to Steph Curry. God got you. Like, the basketball gods protect Steph Curry, and they got you good, man.
Absolutely. Man. The last thing to mention about the trade, obviously, is the hilarity that Taylor Horton-Tucker gets traded for Pat Bev, when, just about a year or so ago, they wouldn't trade Kyle Lowry for him. Now, Kyle, our boy, maybe fallen off the planet a little bit. We're not going to talk about, how good or bad he is. A year ago, Kyle Lowry was good and would have been great for this Lakers team, and so it's kind of crazy how far things can fall.
They wouldn't have had to go out and get Westbrook, which like I think is the major issue at this point, right? Like they would have get to keep all the players that they sent to Washington in exchange for just having Kyle Lowry on their team. Rob
Hmm.
Blinka, man, it's why people don't think he's a great GM.
I mean, the Lakers have proven in the past, 20 years, there's so many young kids that have left the team, haven't looked good while they were there, gone on to brighter pastures. Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball. I'm not even going to say names anymore because if you know, you know.
Randall, Clarkson, Nance,
Like,
Hart.
they're everywhere. They're everywhere.
Oh man, and I'm a Sunny Laker fan.
A little bit, but I think that's enough Lakers chat. I don't really think there's much more we need to go into there. Hopefully, we'll get to talk about it more if this Westbrook trade ever gets to happen, because I know Matt loves to talk about LeBron.
Yeah, buddy, you know it. I mean, let's talk about what we're here to talk about, the Central Division. So we're gonna, pick apart this division, see where everyone stands. Obviously, the Bucks are the class. Chicago, Cleveland are those up and coming teams, and Detroit may be this year, but
It all
Indiana's
depends.
definitely going to be at the bottom of this, man. You want to start at the bottom with Indiana?
We may as well just scrape from the bottom of this barrel. This Pacers team, who, I gotta say, Matt, I can't, hit on them too hard because, 2 years ago, I was always talking about how this Pacers team needed to just sell and hit rock bottom and stop being this team of mediocrity. And I never thought they would do it because, they wanted to stay relevant. They wanted playoff times. But we're so close, man. We're so close to doing it. If they move Miles Turner, if they move Buddy Hield, it is all young assets. It's all future. Their GM talks about how they want to, build around Tyrese. Like, it's time for the future in Indiana.
Yeah, I think it absolutely is because Tyrese Halliburton, Benedict Mathurin, Buddy Hield, Miles Turner aren't going to get you anywhere, especially in this Eastern Conference.
No.
So they may as well cash in, go back to the draft board and see if they can add some players, around these guys. Because unfortunately, like as much as I like Tyrese Halliburton, as much as I like Benedict Mathurin, like neither of them are surefire superstars or all stars in this league on a consistent basis. So you really need those types of players in order to really call your rebuild something that you can push forward and
Yep.
build on. So they're definitely going back to the draft board.
They've got to add, right? And they've got picks, they've got assets, they're young. And if they're going to go all in, then, maybe getting Westbrook, buying him out, and having a better situation in a year or two from now where you don't even remember that you had to, give a guy like $40 million just to not play basketball, right? Like, but that's also hypothetical. We don't want to get into that. Let's talk about what the Pacers have right now, and that is a potential budding star in Tyrese Halliburton. One of Matt's favorite picks from the most recent draft. We do like Mathurin. I was pretty happy that they picked him up. Better than the Kings getting him, at least. That's where my mind goes there for a Canadian. But they've got to figure out their next steps. Obviously, bubble legend T.J. Warren is gone. They don't have Rubio. They don't have Stauskas. They don't have Brogdon. They are looking for the future. And I want to see like 15, 20 wins from this team. I know that's not the best thing to say, but that's what I want to see for them. I want them to be in the lottery.
They had 25 wins last year. 15 wins is
Keep it
definitely
going.
something that is in their reach for sure. But at the end of the day, like when you start your rebuild like this, though, I think you really need to like try and maximize your assets. Like look at what Utah's doing. They are trying to get every single penny that they can out of Gobert and out of Mitchell. I think they really failed on that front with Malcolm Brogdon. I think like Andrew Nemhard, Tice, and Naismith are very, very mediocre, capital to get for him. I think they got a first round pick in that trade, if I'm not mistaken, but Boston's gonna be picking at the back half of the 20s for the next decades. So, like, honestly, they need to get something out of Turner and Buddy Hield, and if those Laker future picks, man, they could be some really, really high picks if they're unprotected. So, they've definitely got to strip it down to the studs. They're in Wembanyama territory this year, but man, we'll see. I mean, hey, if they break 20 wins, I'd be shocked.
Shocked. I mean, we want to see Tyrese, break out, have his opportunities. But when you think about the rest of this roster, there's just not a lot going on. So there's not really much more to say, right? Like, but the best thing that the Pacers have done for themselves is made themselves a true lottery team and not middling in the middle. So, I can at least applaud them on that.
Yeah, because like again, after like the fifth overall pick to the 15th overall pick, it's considered lottery, but
Yeah.
those picks rarely pan. Well, it's not rarely, but like rarely do you find a guy consistently at each of those picks. You got to really do your homework in that 5 to 10 range, and Pacers haven't proven that they can.
Right, we haven't mentioned, our old boy O'Shea Brissett, who's been doing really good since he joined that team, and another guard, Chris Duarte, was proving himself last year. So the Pacers they've got some things going on, but as you mentioned earlier, they just need that little bit more to really get over the top and be a true rebuilding team.
Dude, I like Duarte, I like Halliburton, I like Matherin. They're just like they're not going to be your number one player on a championship team. They're going to be your number one player on a second round exit team. So it's all about where you want to finish in this league, and being mediocre for some franchises is just great because it's relevancy. It's keeping your fans in the building. But I think tanking for 4 or 5 years for a shot at really true contention is always worth it.
I mean, that's how we want to think. You have to be thinking about the ends of the spectrum because to get a championship, to go all the way, you have to be the best team at a given time with the best luck, with the right situation, and you need the best players to make that happen. And unfortunately, a lot of teams get their best players by being absolute garbage, by being
And
literal trash.
and I think like sometimes you need the best player. Like I'm good to move on from the Pacers and talk about the Bucks, buddy. Like Giannis and
Yeah.
that team. If you put Giannis off of it, maybe they're a 40-win team. Maybe Giannis is worth 20 plus wins for this franchise, and if they kept Chris Middleton in the playoffs last year, they might have gone all the way to the finals and might have won. I think picking up Joe Ingles was so sneaky and smart for this franchise. I'm worried about what it's going to do for them defensively, but offensively, where they kind of struggled last year, it's money.
And you have the defensive juggernaut in Giannis. So you can afford to make those decisions because a lot of people don't realize this about Giannis, but he is the best help defender in the league. Right? Like if you can have good strength, stalwart defenders around him, he is going to be that extra little bit that makes it so that your team just feels like unstoppable against. Like you can't get to the rim, you can't get your shots. It's just how it is. And Joe Ingles is the offensive firepower that they needed. I think even if they had Joe Ingles to replace, Chris Middleton's injured minutes this year alone, they might have had a little bit more to be able to get over it, right? Because Joe Ingles came in injured, I'm pretty sure. They got him off an injury because that's why I'm pretty sure why the Jazz sold him last year, if I remember correctly. I could have it wrong, but either way, this Bucks team has an opportunity to keep winning championships because they have a player like Giannis. You think about Jokic, you think about Luka, you think about LeBron, right? There's a select number of players that can bring you 20 wins, that can take you from a 40-win play-in team to a 60-win championship contender, and the Bucks have to keep doing it. Giannis is what, 28?
Yeah,
28 years old right now.
I
Like
think. Yeah.
he's not getting old, but in 2 years he's on the other side of 30, which for Giannis isn't going to be that big of a deal, but it's going to start becoming a conversation. So they really got to capitalize sooner rather than later.
Well, he is a player that predicates a lot of his game on athleticism. Yes, he's super long. Yes, he's super big, but he still needs to be able to get up and down the court. He still needs to be able to dunk on
Yep.
guys. Um, if he can develop his shot, which we've all been saying for the last 5 years, if he can develop that shot, I just don't know if it'll ever happen for him. But yeah, they've got to capitalize on him while they've got him in his prime as the unquestioned number one player. Like everybody knows, you're starting your franchise with one guy. It's Giannis, and then it's Luka. So at this point, man, like they got to capitalize before Luka becomes that next and has that team around him to be able to push to the championship.
Absolutely, and I mean it's also the East, right? You can't just forget about the East right now. There's so many good teams. There's so many up and coming teams, right? Like the Bucks are the cream of the crop right now. But if the NBA has proved anything over the past 10 years, unless you're Golden State, unless you're LeBron, your time at the top is very short, and it doesn't have the opportunity to stay, right? Like yes, Jokic just has these MVPs and MVPs, but because of injuries, his team hasn't been able to go anywhere, right? And
Anywhere.
I don't think Giannis wants his legacy to be getting that one championship and then just falling short over and over, time and time again, because we know that Giannis is a much more dominant force, and if the team is healthy and built well around him, he can be a force that takes you to the finals and can win you multiple championships.
Absolutely, man. He is crazy. A guy who's going to try to do that for his franchise is Evan Mobley in Cleveland, man. He's going to be trying to be that next, how would you classify Giannis? Like point forward,
Yeah.
center, like just monster in the middle is what I like to call him. Um,
Giannis is more of the point forward. Jokic is more of the point center, right? Like that's kind of
yeah,
the way I think about it.
yeah. Just a big monster that you just don't want to have to play against. Evan Mobley, trending towards that direction, especially on the defensive end. They've got a great, roster, and they showed out last year. Like, not a lot of people predicted them to be in the top half of the Eastern Conference for as long as they were. I think it was like 80% of the season they were
Yeah.
up there. And until the Jared Allen injury and like the other injuries that happened, Mobley got hurt for a little bit. Like, until all that, like they were a top four seed. They ended up falling out of the playoffs completely because of Atlanta. But hey, man, I predict them to be a better team this year and to definitely make the playoffs for sure.
When your young defensive stud is getting Tim Duncan comparisons, you're getting set up for success for the future. The Cavs are in a good place. The fact that they have Colin Sexton, a player who 2, 3 years ago was a 20 point per game stud and people were excited about, might not even be on this roster, is just waiting, sitting there with a qualifying offer because Darius Garland broke out last year. Because all these different things, like, the Cavs are in such a good place. And, I can only be so upset as a Raptors fan because there will always be this Cleveland-Toronto rivalry because of LeBronto and what he did. But I'm also pretty happy for this franchise to have them coming back, to be into relevancy, to have such a good stud in Evan Mobley. Mobley and Scotty are kind of like those two guys from this draft that, you know, Scotty fell because he's Scotty. He wasn't part of that, original core of these are the best players. And Mobley just kind of was like, we won't pick him first, right? So they kind of have that, like, budding friendship almost because of that. And so I love seeing both of these teams lifted up and rising together.
Yeah, and the fact that they got Jared Allen, that they've got just a really deep roster at this point. And the fact that Colin Sexton might not even be on this roster, the fact that he can't get a restricted free agent offer because
What?
nobody wants to sign him to a bigger contract that Cleveland wouldn't match. Everything that they think that they would be reasonable for him, they would assume Cleveland would match, and he's trying to get the absolute maximum that he can. I think he's just got to go for a 1 year, try to get a little bit closer to free agency.
Something.
Uh, yeah, man, because he unfortunately is kind of stuck at this point with Karis LeVert on this roster, with Darius Garland. They're kind of just ahead of him at this point, and Cleveland is like okay to let him go. Sucks, but hey, man, it's the nature of the business. Again, he's going to be good on a team that is middling. He might be able to be a fringe piece on a championship caliber team. He's just not going to be that driver. They think Garland's going to be that driver. They think Mobley's going to be that driver. And you know what? They've been pretty right about it, man.
Yeah.
Like those two players have been absolutely phenomenal. Lauri Markkanen and Jared Allen also helped out. Kevin Love, shout out for his 6-man resurgence last year. Like that guy was so good. So they've got a very interesting mix at this point. And after all of those LeBron years, like not being able to put a team together around LeBron and then him leaving because of it, coming back, winning solely because of the moves that LeBron's making, being stuck with Kevin Love, like it's nice to see that they've got this, new core coming up. They've got this new breath of life in their franchise, and it's good to see for them, man. And again, I put them right behind the Bucks in this division.
They're pretty great. And Kevin Love, Matt knows me. I'm super happy for Kevin Love. The man basically helped me win a fantasy championship. Second time won it against Matt. No big deal, not a big deal. Anyways, we'll move past that. But yeah, this Cavs team, they've got a lot going on, and Darius Garland really came out of the woodwork and took over. Right, like it's crazy to think how a career can shift for someone like Sexton because a guy comes in, takes your spot because you got injured, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, what do we need you for anymore? Because Garland can pretty much do everything, and if not better, in certain scenarios, right? Like
He's more efficient. take care of the ball better.
Yeah, exactly. There's no real way to think about it, and so Sexton's got to figure out his future. I mean, there's also Rondo on this team. I forgot that Rondo got traded to the Cavs, and he's just hanging out in free agency. Nobody seemingly wants to pick up Rondo. You know, one of the legends of that Boston Celtics victory from years ago. I'm just ripping on Rondo because Matt knows I like to rip on Celtics, but there's not really much more to say about this Cavs team. You know, they're going to be relevant. They're going to show up. They're going to keep doing their experiment that the rest of the league is looking at. Like, can we do multiple bigs? Is this allowed? Like, the problem is you have such a uniqueness in Evan Mobley and Jared Allen and how they work together, right? Like, it's almost
And marketing.
And marketing exactly coming in and being spot. It's almost a Cat Gobert situation, but a younger version of it, and also very different. Because, I mean, Mobley compared to Cat in like 5 years won't even be close, in my opinion.
Well, Mobley, I think, is more the Gobert in the situation if you're going to compare them. But he has more offensive ability than Gobert could ever dream of. And then Jared Allen is a better defender than Cat is, specifically in the post.
Yeah.
And then the fact that you got Markkanen, the sharpshooter, the fact that we haven't even mentioned Isaac Okoro, who was a lottery pick 2 years ago and could really blow up this season. I'd love this. They're a really good roster, man.
Matt, just
unfortunately
trying to make me feel better. You know, Isaac Okoro, my rookie of the year pick from years ago. You know, he probably doesn't even remember that, but that's my hilarity right there. I'd love to see Isaac Okoro blow up, but yeah, you mentioned it. It's unfortunate that the Cavs are doing so good because it's another Eastern Conference team that we got to contend with.
Hey, man, you know what? There's going to be a lot of rookies of the year coming out of the Eastern Conference. We seem to be, picking them pretty well. It was between Mobley and Barnes this year, and honestly, I think we've got two in this division. Like we talked about Benedict Mathurin, but Jaden Ivey could be easily the front runner for this award. And I mean, you look at the Pistons, man. They don't got much anymore. They took away Jeremy Grant, Josh Jackson, Luka Garza. They're depleted, and they could just run it through Cade and Jaden Ivey at this point.
The Pistons, hands down, won this most recent draft, and it's not even close. Knicks fans still in shambles about the trade, but I won't rip on them too much because that's not fair. Let's talk about the beauty of the Detroit Pistons. There's so many good ways to go with this team. You know, everyone was joking when Cade got drafted that Detroit basketball was back, but I think this year's draft and this year's decision-making from the front office has really proven that Detroit basketball is looking to come back. It's ready to start. You know, the train is getting loaded. Everyone's packing on. Their stuff's getting in their cartridges, and they're about to shoot out of the station. Because Detroit, man, they're looking like they could be someone. I'm not talking about being, championship relevant, but when you talk about a young team that has a lot of assets and has a true potential floor general superstar in Cade, you can't forget about this team. You can't ignore the Pistons. And as Raptors fans who can never beat the Detroit Pistons in any games, this is not a team we want being that good, okay? It's not.
Dude, it's crazy how they just got the perfect complement to Cade in the draft in terms of Jaden Ivey. If you're going to do two different guards, one is a slower, play at his own pace, sets everybody up kind of guard, and Cade, definitely true superstar potential. And then you've got Jaden Ivey, who's the athletic slasher, jumps out of the gym kind of guy, and it's just going to push this team. The fact that they got Jalen Duren at 12, I think it was, out of Memphis, he's going to be, I think, a good center. They insulated him well by, fleecing the New York Knicks for Nerlens Noel and Alex Burke for absolutely nothing. They also stole Kevin Knox from them, Kemba Walker, they just doing a Knicks rebuild over here. But hey, man, I think when you have the better pieces like Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren, I think it's gonna be better, man. I think it's gonna be better than having just RJ Barrett as the guy to build around.
You've got it right there, right? All of these young names, all of these great players that can come in and find places on a roster, and there's no expectations, right? This team has the opportunity to figure out what they want to be. But Matt, there's one name we haven't mentioned yet that I have to bring up right now. He's a guy who I'm going to be really high on in this season, and if he lets me down, well, I'm going to have to rethink my entire way of life. All right, Sadiq Bey. One, he has a sick name, but two, this guy was told by his front office, hey man, you need to get a hobby. all you care about is basketball and it's not good. You need to go do something else. So he decided, I'm just going to go move to Colorado and just go hike mountains. And if anybody who knows me knows, I'm all about hiking mountains. I'm all about living out in the wilderness. So this guy who, if you assume that Kevin Knox is going to become nothing because it's Kevin Knox and you can assume that, this guy is the wing player on this roster. Last season, he was putting up 16 points a game quietly for this Detroit Piston team. And now he's going to be superhuman with all of this, oxygen he's going to be able to breathe with his super lungs from Colorado. So Sadiq Bey looking like he's going to join this young roster and become something special. I'm excited for the Pistons, man.
Did he not drop a 50 burger last year? I'm pretty sure he dropped a 52-point
I
masterpiece.
think
Like,
so.
this guy, I agree. He's got great potential. Another lottery pick for this Detroit Pistons team. Um, you know, what more can you say, man? They've got a really good young core. It's scary how good and young they are, but we'll see if they can like make some noise. What, they win 23 games last year, so if they win 35, 40 games, it'll definitely be a huge success. And another part of this whole equation is Dwayne Casey, man. We saw Dwayne Casey take a young Raptors team filled with potential
Yep.
and coach the best out of them. I've faith that he's going to be able to do it with this Detroit team, and I hope that he gets the shot to see it all the way through. I hope that he gets the leeway to develop this core into what he wants, and then is able to get to a finals. Because I'd like to see. I felt so bad for the guy after winning Coach of the Year, like, and then
Yeah.
getting fired, and he's accepting the Coach of the Year award, all like pissed because like obviously he just got fired for no reason. If you're the Coach of the Year, yeah, it was I'd
It's
like to see it for him.
we have such a weird emotional relationship with Dwayne Casey because we love the guy because of what he did for us, but also we're like, how do you beat us in every game that you play, Dwayne? But no, like I'm looking at like a Taylor Jenkins Grizzlies situation over here, right? Like I want to see this young player development continue to work together, and they've made all the right steps. They've put themselves in the right position to be successful, and now it's almost up to the players and Dwayne and everyone to come together and see if they can be something together, whether it's a bad boiled stew or if it's just going to be something really delicious and delectable you're not expecting. I want to see it.
And they're doing what you technically should be doing in the NBA. Like what has been proven to work over the last few years is building a team through the draft, through continuity, and really developing together. Right? Like they're not like just throwing a bunch of random pieces together. Which actually brings us to our last team, man, the Chicago Bulls. They chose to go that route. They traded for Nikola Vucevic. They re-signed Zach LaVine. They would after they traded for him. They traded for Lonzo. They got Caruso. Like this team is good. We don't even talk about DeMar who signed there in free agency. I don't know if this year is going to be better than last year. I think that they had one opportunity last year to really shock the league, and I think they came out and shocked a lot of teams in the first half, and that's why they were so good. The injury bug really, really knocked them down, but I don't know if they're going to be able to replicate that kind of a season again this year. I know you're quite high on them.
There's just too many players I like on this team now. Of course, they've added higher aspirations going on, and as Matt reminds me, we can't be pumped about a team that has higher aspirations. Or no, all jokes aside, I just
Like,
want to see it for the Bulls, man. I just want to see it for DeMar. I want to see it for the squad. And the injury bug, as you mentioned, really did take them down. And so I have hope that they can be healthy. Now, you have Lonzo Ball, who has never been able to prove that he's been healthy, as that floor general for your team. And if he's not able to be there to keep that flow, that system that you had at the beginning of last season, you're going to fall apart again, and you're going to have LaVine and DeMar just taking mid-range jump shots, and middies don't work in the postseason, man. The Suns have tried for years as the best mid-range shooting team, and it still has not worked for them in the postseason. So I don't know, man. I want the Bulls to do well, but I just don't see it.
and at the end of the day, like we've seen DeMar at his best, and we've seen what that is. Um, Honestly, for this team, in order for them to really take the next step, Patrick Williams is going to have to be fully healthy and
Yeah.
play at a really high level. He's going to have to prove why he was that fourth overall pick coming out of Florida State. If he can show what Scotty showed, that'll definitely improve this team's chance. And then also Kobe White, man. I think Colby White has had a sneaky decent start to his career. I think he's a little bit underrated. And I think he's going to pop this year. I think he's going to really show out as like a true scorer in the NBA, be able to hit the three on a really consistent basis. And if those two things come together, this team might be able to really push in that Eastern Conference. I just think the Eastern Conference is so deep at this point. Like with Atlanta doing what they did, I think they jumped them.
Yeah.
I think Cleveland jumps them just naturally with the progression of their roster. I think we're ahead of them, and then that's not even talking about Brooklyn, Bucks, Philadelphia, Miami, Boston. Right? Like,
I completely with you, and I think the Bulls have like the largest spread of possibility too, right? Like because of the injury bug, because of the unknownness of their young guys, because of the fact that you might have to rely on Alex Caruso to play a lot of minutes, which is good. Is a very good defensive player. He's a great style of player, but
yeah,
you don't want him having to be relied on when you should be relying on Lonzo, when you should be relying on Zach, when you should be relying on DeMar. And Vucevic, like, what do I say about Vucevic? Apparently they're in discussions about an extension. I hope it's a very team-friendly deal, Vuce, because you are dragging, you are the one at the back who's just kind of hanging out while everyone else is dragging you along, unfortunately. You're not the star that they traded for.
well, what he is he's a great, great box score player. Like when you look at the box score, he
Yeah.
does so well on those stats that you're like, oh, he must be a really good player. But when you actually talk about impacting winning, he is like the opposite of Draymond Green. Draymond Green has no stats to show for his impact, but you can feel the impact that he brings on the court. And I think that's going to be the biggest issue with Vucevic. And so I would agree, like they've got to go team friendly contract, please.
Yeah, exactly. And the last thing to say, Matt Thomas is a free agent for this team. Somebody pick up Mr. 99% from Europe. Matt knows that I just love to talk about my ex-Raptor players, but I think that's pretty much it. We can roll into Raptors chat if you're ready, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, like if you want to do some Raptors chat, like there's not a ton to talk about. There's the back end of the roster and who's going to really make the 6 to or I guess the 10 to 15 range. I think we've got a decent idea though.
It's more about like there's a bunch of names left, and we're gonna go into training camp in a few weeks, and these guys are really gonna have to figure out if they can show off and if Nurse is gonna want them in their system. And I know that you and I are a little bit higher on different people. I'm still sad that there's no Utah Watanabe on this list, but unfortunately I don't get to talk about Utah anymore because he just did not cut it in the NBA. He could not knock down those threes. But let's talk about the team that does exist. We have hope for Malachi, we have hope for Delano, but the guys that are, kind of more on the bottom of it, will Koloko make the list? I know you're really big on Jeff Doughton, right? Like, Svi still has his contract. There's all these guys that are fighting, but, like, who is going to take those spots is the question we're at.
Yeah, well, I think the Raptors over the last few years have definitely shown that they trend to younger players, especially on the back half of our roster is what we're looking for. So guys like Justin, guys like Malachi, guys like Delano are all going to get really good looks, and same with Christian. Obviously, I think Kem is going to be one of our center options.
Yeah.
But like, I think we have a decent idea, man. Like, it's just going to be whether any of them can take a step, the younger guys, and really impact our team in a great way. Because really, like, we know our team and we know who's going to be getting the bulk of the minutes when everybody's healthy. And at the end of the day, I'm totally fine with that. Roll it out with Scotty, Siakam, OG, Fred, and Gary, and toss me some Precious, some Otto Porter Jr. Minutes. Because as much as I like Thad Young, I think he needs to be managed because he's a little bit older.
He's much more of a locker room presence. I think that's where a lot of his veterancy comes from in this day and age, and I know that he's meshed well with the guys and they do like him. I still think that Thad is part of the major reason why guys like Boucher and Precious were able to change their mindsets a little bit last season. I look at him as like, that veteran presence in the locker room who could maybe explain to them that, hey guys, this is about a lengthy career. This is about the team coming together. This is about winning championships. It's not just about you, yourself, and I. So I have hopes for this team. I'm interested to see what happens. Otto, we haven't talked about Otto a lot, but I like to think that Otto is going to be the type of player that can make it. And so we'll see come come the end of the week because I have hope for this Raptors squad. I think that it is going to be fun, right? Like, we're really excited for this season. And at the end of the day, man, I just want good Raptors basketball. Matt's come back to us. He's still alive. We're happy to see it. But, anything else you got on the Raptors side of things, man? I've just been rambling about our boys.
No, man, it's good. We're good to go into some takes.
Perfect. Well, I mean, Matt heard it earlier. For me, I was already talking about him, but it's all about Sadiq Bey for me. I'm excited to see what he can do. He had a really good step up last season, but I want to see if he can continue. The guy shoots almost 7 threes a game, Matt, and he's a 38% three-point shooter. So I want to see that continue. If he can get his rebounds and assists up a little bit, we're looking at a stealthy MIP season coming in from my boy Sadiq.
Hey man, he could definitely do it. If he does have that MIP and Cade really takes that step, maybe Chicago or maybe Detroit's pushing for a playoff spot, man. Maybe that play in. A team that I'm pretty down on I think is gonna miss the top 6 in the Eastern Conference this year is Chicago, man. They were in it last year. They were one of the number 1 seeds for the majority of the season. I think this year they're gonna end up in the 7 to 10 range. Where that is, who knows? But unfortunately, Chicago fans, you still didn't put together that championship core.
They're just not quite there. They're close, but just no cigar for Chicago.
I think last year was their best option, and it didn't come through. So.
Such is. All right, well, I think that'll wrap it up today. So thanks everybody for being here. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Board Sports. Like, subscribe, give us that thumbs up, and check out theboardsports.net for new episodes and blog posts.
And we'll talk to you next time.